About to introduce someone who should be very familiar to anyone who actually attends the University of Maryland. Anyone ever heard of Dr. Marsha Guenzler-Stevens? Well, Dr. Marsha Guenzler-Stevens is one of those doctors who actually sort of shuns being called doctor because everyone just calls her Marsha. I think that speaks to her sincerity and her putting her mission and energy above any type of title. Dr. Guenzler-Stevens serves as director of the Adele H Student Union, the Center for Campus Life, which I passed up when I was walking around this campus sounding like, Silence of the Lambs talking about, I'm looking for Clarice, the Clarice Smith Center, Clarice. But Dr. Guenzler-Stevens, included along with the Stamp Student Union, is the Center of Campus Life. Included in this vibrant center is visited by 18,000 people per day, which is amazing to me. I need to give all of them to give me $1. But in there are units including leadership and community service, the National Clearinghouse for leadership programs, and various student organizations and campus governance groups. In 1993, Dr. Guenzler-Stevens, or Marsha, was recognized as an outstanding associate staff member at the University of Maryland at College Park, and in 1995, she was named one of the institution's Women of Influence. Throughout Marsha's mentoring experiences with students and young adults, she noticed a similarity in their questions, and in her presentation, she will talk about the importance of focusing on the questions of the present, not so much the answers of the future. So, sharing with us how to learn to love the questions, give it up for Dr. Marsha Guenzler-Stevens.
Good morning. What a joy to be here. You know, every day, each of us gets a lot of unsolicited advice. Sometimes it comes in the form of questions like, what are you going to do with your life? And sometimes in these really juicy nuggets of wisdom. When I was in college, one of my favorite professors said to me, I think he was rather exasperated, Marsha, you've got to learn to love the questions because you don't always get the answers. He also passed me a quote one day. A quote that would sort of inform my life. It was from Emile Zola. And it said, if you asked me what I came into the world to do, I will tell you, I came to live out loud. You see, each and every day, unintentionally or intentionally, we live out loud. Through our actions, our words, our beliefs. And it is a glorious thing, but it is not without fear. And there are tons of questions nagging at us. So I want to talk a little bit today about learning to love the questions, but also doing that while living out loud. A primer, if you will, of 5 lessons for you and for me about that journey. Lesson 1, to live out loud, you have to have values and opinions and passions and beliefs as your base, the foundation of the music, if you will. You know, I think we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out the answer to 2 questions that we'll think we'll figure out and then we won't. First question, who am I? Second question, what is my purpose? You know, sometimes we will be so cool. We'll live at the intersection of passion and purpose. We'll be congruent. We'll have lives and work we call our calling. We'll be so ever present in the world of values and acting on them. But more often than not, we'll kind of be that person that's passion fatigued or in the weeds, unable to really answer those big questions in life. You know what's critically important is that you try. You just try to learn to love the questions and work your way to the answers eventually. I love the idea of the second lesson, which is this. I think I learned it not from anyone else, but from a student who said to me one night, hey, Marsha, you say you're a Midwesterner and you practice what you preach, right? But in reality, I want to go with you this week when you do community service because you always say to us as educated citizens, we need to do community service. And I said, oh, crap, I was thinking of my job as community service. I was there so frequently. But I said, let's go find something to do because I think I've been living my life one way and saying another. And so we went to work at a dental clinic for low-income and homeless children, a clinic that we would work at for the next 13 years. And I went in to save those children one tooth at a time. But in reality, I learned far more from my young patients and their parents than I ever taught. And when one of my co-volunteers, Lynn, was killed, I got this startling statistic that I read about in the paper, and it was my friend. And those startling statistics still reported by the Children's Defense Fund that every 3 days in the United States, 3 children are killed to violence. 26 children, a classroom wiped out every 3 days. That was my wake-up call. It was my passion and purpose together. I don't know what yours will be. Global warming, rampant racism, public health concerns, being for a friend what they need at the moment. Live it out loud. Second important lesson. You have to choose. You can't sing all the parts. That is blasphemy to a group of student leaders who've showed up on Saturday morning for a TED Talk. But the reality is we're all living in a sea of choices, swimming there, and we can either float in that sea of choices, or we can drown in that sea of choices, or we can choose. Ooh, that's hard stuff. Choosing is hard stuff. And in reality, I'm reminded of a friend who, when I was in college, did one of those things you really hate. She holds the mirror kind of up in front of you and says, Marsha, you are not Superwoman. You know, you think you can be everything to everyone. You really believe that you're perfect, but you're not. And I bristled at that advice, unsolicited as it was. In my late 30s, she would come back to say the very same thing to me. I was flying back and forth to Massachusetts every week for 5 years. My husband lived there, I lived here, and I love him dearly. And 9/11 came, and she called again, and she said, Marsha, are you afraid of flying? And I said, no, I'm not afraid of flying. I'm afraid of flying. There's a crash. The only thing they find in the wreckage is my calendar. And they write my eulogy using my calendar. And they say Marsha loved meetings more than anything else in life. Because if you looked at my calendar, you would find that's what takes my time. Well, if I found your calendars, would I find that the people you love and the causes you're passionate about get the time they deserve? Or would you be living lives rather incongruent with what you really find most dear? It's not easy. We can't sing all the parts if we're going to be loud. So how do you make the choices? Third lesson, an important one. We all need to dream big and expect the best if we're going to live out loud. So, I think it's important to say your dreams out loud to yourself. In the car is really appropriate. Head, heart, dream, let it rip. But sometimes I think we have to listen to other people's dreams as well. Here's a good example. Don Bennett was the first single amputee to climb Mount Rainier, 15,000 feet. He was making his way up the hill, and when he came to this ice field, he was having a freeze problem with his prosthetic leg. His 17-year-old daughter, Kathy, was with him on that climb, and she stood next to his dad, and she yelled in his ear, "You can do it, Dad. You're the best dad in the whole world. Come on, Dad, you can do it." Who yells in your ear? Who tells you, you can do it? Sometimes I think the loudest voice is the voice you hear from within. But I'm not so certain that we don't need others around us telling us, you're the best one in the whole world. How critical it is to say your dreams, to hear them out loud, and to know that others have heard them too. I remember a young man who was really good at talking about his dreams. He would come by my office all the time, talk about his ambition, his plans, his dreams. Ooh, they'd be long conversations, totally meaning of life. One night he came by my office and he said, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And I was like, "No." In my mind, I thought that. Instead, I said, "Oh, I'm on my way to a meeting," because, I love them. And I said, "Why don't we walk together to that meeting, and we can talk a little bit on my way." And so we're walking. We didn't get very far into our journey. And he turned to me and he said, "You know what, Marsha, lately I've been thinking a lot about killing myself." And suddenly that meeting didn't seem important at all. And so I said, "Let's go back to my office and talk." And then we got him the help he needed then and the help he needed a few months later. That man is an exceptional person. He's grown into his life. We communicate regularly by note and email, but we always close our notes the exact same way. "Thanks for taking a minute." You see, we get lots of minutes every day, and we can make a choice as to whether or not we spend a few moments in reflection just dreaming, listening to our own head and heart until that round trip is complete. Or we listen to the dreams of others, breathing air into them. Take the minutes, dream big, expect the best. Fourth lesson. You and I will sound a whole lot louder if we join our voices together with other people. Now, I'm pretty loud myself, but the reality is I love being around people. In this global, mobile society, we're going to move further and further away from family, from friends. And what we're going to find is that we're going to have to construct family out of friends and coworkers and neighbors. We're going to find that those people are really important to us. Even if they're quirky and odd and it was really risky to be in relationship with them, it definitely was not without fear. But crafting those new families will give us someone to yell in our ear, "You can do it." But it'll also give us the support we need. I'm reminded of a young woman who was a big protester. She wanted an Asian American Studies program at the University of Maryland. We didn't have one. And so she was fearless in her efforts to push for that until her senior year when she graduated, the first from that program. And she would go on to have this amazing career in public policy. And 10 years in, she decided she needed a break. And she flew to India, where she spent a year working with previously sex-trafficked women. And she did extraordinary things. And I think she'd still be there if she hadn't gotten a call from the President of the United States that said, "Won't you come back? I want you to be the Deputy Director of the White House Office on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders." And I thought, I know where that dream got started. And she gave me a tapestry as she came back from India. It's what hangs on our wall. And it is for us a symbol of the fact that our lives have been stitched together, hers and mine, through so many beautiful and hard things. We're family. She's responsible for me, I for her. She taught me to take risks. I hope I taught her that she was loved. Fifth and finally, I think what's really important is that if we're to live out loud, we need to occasionally celebrate, shout, and verbalize our gratitude. You know, none of us arrived here by ourselves. I know that because I read college admission essays sometimes, and it's always about grandpa, or it's about your teacher, or the mentor, or the older student who did extraordinary things to advance and transform your life. And I hope you know that telling their story is really important. But I also hope that you verbalize the gratitude you have for that transformational friendship or love. I also know that we're standing on the shoulders of people, that we need to celebrate them, that we need to thank them, that we need to carry their stories forward. I'm standing on the shoulders of my family, most particularly my mother, who's waged a 40-year battle against multiple sclerosis. She is my hero. I'm standing on the shoulders of my father, a sterling example of unconditional love and care. I'm standing on the shoulders of young high school girls from Baltimore who I travel the world with. This past summer, we were in South Africa. We were having lunch with Desmond Tutu. And these young women, in their minds, I could see it clicking, I will be a world leader and be a change agent myself. And I knew in the back of my mind, I needed to say to them, you can do it. You're the best in the whole world. I'm standing on the shoulders of my comparative anatomy professor, the only woman I had in the sciences, who taught me to be a strong woman. I'm standing on the shoulders of young veteran students at the University of Maryland who were so valiant and brave and courageous in war, but also learned the meaning of family and brought that to the University of Maryland. I'm standing on the shoulders of young people who start TEDx talks and make them happen. I'm standing on the shoulders of students who for the last so many years have been my most significant teachers. In some ways, they taught me to learn to love the questions, even when you had to live your way to the answers. They taught me to do extraordinary things, to live out my values and do them loudly. They taught me to dream and to say something of that dream and to turn around and, I hope, turn to them and say, you can do this. You're the best. They taught me that we needed to celebrate, that we were family. I hope I asked them really hard questions the whole way through. Those that cultivated meaning in their lives, those that pushed them to be more than they were yesterday. And for you, if I meet you in a week or a month or 10 years from now, and I ask you that really important question, what did you come into this world to do? I hope you will tell me, I came to live out loud. Thank you.
Very nice.